Hi, this video is going to walk you through setting up and using a running agenda template that you might use on a PLC, building leadership team, SCL leadership team, what have you, just a team that's going to meet throughout the year. And we are going to click Use Template to get our own copy of this. And this video I'm making is going to be on YouTube. There will be a link to what I was just looking at in the YouTube description. So just find the link there and make a copy of the template. So the first thing I'm going to do is name this document so I'll be able to find it later. I'm going to call it SCL team, put the year in there, running agenda. And then I'm going to put the same thing up here so when people open this up, they know what it is. Okay, now we have the table of contents. So I'm going to focus a lot on this because it's one of the coolest features of this running agenda template. What we have here, and I can click on any of these and jump down to them, is an action plan, a typical whole group meeting template, and then a huddle up template. Because what we found is just sometimes one or two people need to get together between meetings to figure out something, or they might attend a training together or another meeting, and it's just helpful to take notes in this running agenda so that we have less documents in our Google Drive and so that we can connect back to the whole team with it. So we call that a huddle up. I'm going to jump down to the meeting template. So we would recommend you just leave these blank. Leave this the way it is. And when we have our first meeting, I'm going to just hold Shift on my keyboard, scroll down, and then click here, and it'll highlight the whole template for you. Just click Control-C, Command-C to copy it. And then I'm going to just move it down. And pasting with Command-V or Control-V, whether you're using a Mac or a PC. And now I've got two of those, and I'm just going to name this one, say that we're meeting 9/9/21. So I'm just putting the date there. So you see I've got a template ready to go for our meeting on the 9th, but I still have this guy, which is blank, which is just nice to keep. So I've got always that blank meeting template. And if I scroll up to the first page here, this is an automatic table of contents. So I just click anywhere in here, and you see this kind of thing just pulls up. And I click the refresh button, and you see 9/9/21 got added. So this is formatted already. You don't have to worry about knowing how to use this. Anytime you're copying and pasting one of these template thingamajiggers that we've got here, all you have to do is scroll up there and click refresh, and it will be added to the table of contents so that people can get to it. Let's do the same thing for a huddle up. So I'm going to click down to my huddle up template. And again, I just don't want to mess with the template. I want to have the blank template here. So I'm going to put my cursor at the top of this template, hold my Shift key, click down here, and it'll select the whole thing for me. Control-C or Command-C to copy it. And then say we meet as a whole team on the 9th. And then a couple of days later, I need to follow up with an action item with one other team member. So we just want to jot down some notes in here. So I pasted it in with Command-V or Control-V, Mac and PC. And say that we do it on the 11th. So I just put that date here. And again, I'm going to scroll up, hit that refresh key, and now my 11th is added there. So I'm going to jump to our first meeting on the 9th and just walk through this. Pretty self-explanatory. There's a place to jot down who's here. So let's say we're starting our first meeting of the year on the 9th. Becky's here. George is here. Hamilton is here. Ted is here. Let's leave it at that. So Ted is going to be the facilitator, note taker. Norm guardian, we're going to get to that, but it's a person that would make sure that people are following the norms and stand up and voice if we're drifting from our norms. So let's say Becky volunteers for that. Timekeeper, just make sure that looking at the agenda we have enough time, or encouraging people we need to move faster so that we can get to everything. So Hamilton's going to do that. All right, so norms. So there's a lot of different ways you can set norms in a team. One of the quickest ways to do it is with this template. We have some pretty common norms that teams end up with listed here, and a very, very quick way to do it, because often in teams we just want to get rolling with our agenda at the beginning of the year. It just takes literally a minute, 90 seconds, 2 minutes to say, hey, these are some pretty common norms that teams set. Before we start our first meeting, let's just take a second and everybody put an X next to norms that they think are really, really important. And of course, you can add to this list, guys. So everybody just quietly goes through and adds X's to ones that they think are really important. And you really want to end up with like 3 to 5, just like classroom rules. We want a reasonable list of things that we can quickly review and refresh ourselves on before each meeting. So it can't be a novel, and it can't be like 25 or 12 or even 8 things. It's just too much. So typically, you know, it takes 45 seconds or so for people to look this over, put their X's down, and then we would pick the ones that the most people voted for, typically. So we would take, in this case, these guys, and typically just unhighlight them. Get rid of those X's. And then we are going to get rid of the ones. And we can, of course, as a team, you can always add to this later. It's just, like I said, a really quick way to get the team rolling. Super type A over here, so I'm going to take off that highlighting. All right, and then I'm going to copy this, and this is the only case where I'm going to scroll down to our meeting template and modify that, because anytime I make a copy of our blank template, I want these norms that we've picked. All right, back to our meeting on the 9th. So we've got our norms listed. So the next time that we meet as a team, what we would do is assign our roles. First thing I did over here, and then the facilitator or the norm guardian, somebody would just read these over quick or give people 20 seconds to look them over. Because again, it's just that primer. Hey, this is the stuff we're going to try and do. We're more likely to meet our norms if everybody looks them over and hears them right before we go into our meeting. Couple things with the meeting agenda. So there's space here, and you could delete this row if you don't want it, to just do a quick welcoming routine. You could just say, like, delete all of this and just write celebrations and gratitude. I have a couple of teams that just start with a quick round of that, or if anybody just wants to volunteer something to celebrate or something they're grateful for. We did link to some community building questions. These are ones that we use in our districts for high schoolers, closest thing to adults. So we sometimes use these during professional learning as just a warm-up. It's going to take a second to load, but there's just a bunch of like fun get-to-know-you icebreaker questions. So for example, just taking a sec to load here. There we go. There's a couple hundred options, so it just takes a second while I'm recording a video. If you could see one movie again for the first time, what would it be and why? So I might just copy and paste this right here, and I'll just do that for the sake of this video I'm making. So just selecting my message, and instead of this little template thing, it's just going to say this. And then I'd start my meeting as the facilitator. I wouldn't do this during the meeting. I would have already written this in. Takes like 30 seconds, as you saw. And I would say, hey, you guys just turn to your partner, answer this question. Gets people talking. It's a nicer way to start the meeting than just drilling into the agenda. So like I said, you could do that as your typical thing or not. Or you could just leave it as celebrations and gratitude. At the very end of the meeting, we have kind of the same thing where it says optimistic closure. A really simple one that people use a lot is just, what are you looking forward to for the rest of the day? You could also ask the group, like, What was the thing that excited you about today? Anything that you're left wondering about after our meeting today? Or what's the first thing that you're going to do to follow up on what we talked about today? Those kind of questions to kind of bring it home and give people some closure on the meeting. So you could leave those template rows in there or not. It's totally up to you. The next thing we have here is a check action plan. So with these running agendas, often those kinds of teams have projects that kind of linger throughout the year, or it might be just something that team is there to focus on, like a task force. So at the beginning of each meeting, we have a link to an action plan where you would check what are our updates on our action plan for our goals or our objectives that we're working on. And then at the very end of every meeting, it's good to update that action plan. Like maybe we thought of some extra steps that we need to take on before our next meeting. So let's just check that out. If you click there, action plan goes up here. And again, this is totally modifiable. It's just a starting point. But it has 3 objectives. You can have like subtasks below each of those objectives. A point person is always a good idea for each little task, somebody who's going to be accountable and trying to watch over and make sure this actually happens. We're more likely to do things when we have some kind of deadline drafted. You space for notes, and then just place to put a check mark, a really satisfying check mark when it's done. So for example, last year, one of the teams I was working on was new expectations. New school-wide behavior expectations is more precise. So we had like draft new expectations in table, draft posters, get feedback. So you get the idea. As you meet and as you talk, your team will come up with, this is what we want to do. These are the sub little pieces of how we want to do it, and so on and so forth. And by having a section on your agenda like this, an action plan, it's easier to keep track of stuff, because I'm sure you may have been on a team where all the kind of information about these tasks and goals and such and progress is scattered throughout the agenda, and it can be really exhausting to kind of go digging through all the previous agendas like this one, trying to find that information. So it is a little bit more time to take stuff from the current meeting that we're having on the 9th, and then throughout the year keep updating this action plan with it. So maybe we talk about, maybe on this meeting on the 9th, we talk a lot about posters and have a lot of text here in our notes about the status of the posters and updates. And then we have to kind of take that at the end of the meeting when we update our action plan and pull over whatever is relevant to our action plan. That takes a little bit more time every time you meet to do that, but in the long run, it saves time and the team is more likely to get stuff accomplished if you have a central action plan placed like this, where you're spending time actually looking at your progress and your steps. And with that, I think everything is covered. Those are just the basics of the meeting agenda template. Why don't I one more time just model, let me take my meeting template, the one I want to leave blank, and say that our next meeting after this little huddle up on the 11th is going to be on the 14th. So again, I'm going to scroll up, click refresh, and it just gets added. So one of the best features of this is just that automatic table of contents. Thank you for watching the video. Have a wonderful school year.